Hello, and welcome to Your History in Elections, where today I'm going to be continuing my series looking at the presidential election polls in all of the swing states and filling in the electoral map based on the current polling data, average polling data of 538. And we are now 9 days away from Election Day, less than 10 days, and just for comparison, in 2016, 11 days before the election, the James Comey letter revealing that the FBI would reopen the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails happened, and that was the main influence on the race in the final days of the 2016 election, and arguably it did change the presidential election. Hillary Clinton went from being 6 points up nationwide to about 3 points nationwide using polling, and ended up with only 2% nationwide lead on the popular vote. Now, realistically, there has been the Hunter Biden emails with the laptop. However, it really hasn't had much of an effect on the race, whether or not because it was, you know, discovered by intelligence through Rudy Giuliani. It's not from the FBI, it's not from a central intelligence agency, which does show that it's definitely not as reliable or as substantial as the one that Hillary Clinton faced back in 2016. And other than that, there doesn't seem to be any sort of important October surprise, as you could call it, a late October surprise that Donald Trump and the Republicans have been holding out for. And at the moment, it does seem that Joe Biden will be winning the election. Based on the polls were not entirely correct statewide in 2016, as we saw. However, there's been improvement to the polls, and in some of these states, the polling margins, even with quite a wide margin of about 5 points, like it was in 2016, you will still see Joe Biden win the election. Now, this is what I have. I have the safe states plus Nebraska's second district, which has been polling consistently in favor of Joe Biden. And even if you take the polls out, the trends that he's been doing very well with suburban white women, given that this is the suburbs and city of Omaha, Joe Biden will likely do very well. And in Maine's second district, this could arguably be a toss-up, but I'm going to give this to Donald Trump just in case he does hold on to this. And realistically, this is going to be a toss-up. However, I do think Donald Trump will probably narrowly win Maine's second district come November 3rd. Now, this is using the latest data gathered from 538 and the aggregate of the polls. The last time I did this, last time I covered the presidential election, I believe was about maybe 2 weeks ago, maybe just under 2 weeks ago. So there's been quite a few more polls that has happened since, and there has been some narrowing and some flips since my last video. Now we're just going to cover the likely Democratic states, and that is every single state that Hillary Clinton won back in 2016. New Hampshire, Minnesota, Colorado, Nevada. Nothing has changed since my last video, or for the entire election since I was covering back in May or possibly June. I think it was May though when I made this, where I started this series, and these races really realistically have not changed since then. So I just simply characterize Wisconsin. However, I'm now going to characterize Wisconsin as a likely state for the Democrats. Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania all currently are going for the Democrats, and this would already give them the win. They don't even have to win anything else. These states, the states that Hillary Clinton won back in 2016, plus Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, would all be going to Hillary Clinton. And there's a 7-point lead in Wisconsin, 8-point lead in Michigan, and a 6-point lead in Pennsylvania. Now, Pennsylvania, out of all of these, is actually the one that is most likely going to vote for Trump if something did happen. Uh, a few months ago, and the lead up to those few months from 2016, everyone thought that Wisconsin was going to be the type one. However, Wisconsin and Michigan have stayed, somewhat steady for the Democratic challenger Joe Biden. However, Pennsylvania has definitely trended in the direction of Donald Trump, especially in these last 10 or so days. And he's doing very well with the Western Pennsylvania vote. I think the way that Trump could win the state is by getting those who didn't vote for him back in 2016, the miners, the industry workers, and especially Northeast, helping to consolidate votes there. Because Joe Biden is going to be winning suburban votes surrounding Philadelphia, Scranton, and probably Pittsburgh as well. So Donald Trump will have to counter that increase in votes from the suburbs, an increase from votes from the rural and industry-focused areas of the state. But at the moment, Joe Biden is likely to win the state, and even though many analysts from both Republican and Democratic firms have said it is likely tighter than this, they usually give a Biden a 2 or 3% win in the state. Now we're going to be moving on to the lean Democratic states, and that includes Arizona. You're looking at a 3-point lead there. Florida, a 2-point lead there. North Carolina currently holds a 3-point lead still. And is there any other ones I can characterize in this? No, those are the only ones that are currently lean for the Democrats. And other than North Carolina, which has held its 3-point lead since my last video, Florida has tightened, Arizona has tightened, and these two states, and every single lean state is within the margin of error for Joe Biden. And Florida, I believe, realistically, Florida is probably a toss-up. It depends on the amount of voters that actually come out for the Republicans. Donald Trump is focused on the villages. He's gone there about 4 times in the last month, whereas Joe Biden is focused on Miami and getting the suburbs in that area to come out. However, Florida is realistically a toss-up. It's within the margin of error. Same with Arizona, even though sorry about that. Even though I do think Arizona does have a good chance of going to the Democrats this time around. Like I've mentioned in previous videos, the trends are very positive. House elections, Senate election, the Democrats are doing overwhelmingly well for a state that went to the Republicans so solidly back in 2012 and 2008. The Democratic shift in the Southwest, especially in Arizona, has been quite monumental, and is definitely going to be a close one to look there. Now, these are the really interesting states that depend whether this is going to be a Biden blowout or a Donald Trump, somewhat of a close victory, because any of these states and the ones I just covered, the 3 in the Sun Belt, could realistically still go for Donald Trump, as well as the 3 Rust Belt states. If there is a significant shift, which we haven't seen in the next week, then those states could also be in play. But at the moment, they are realistically not in play for the president. And Joe Biden currently has a tilt lead in Iowa and Georgia. Now, Iowa has held its 1-point advantage for the former vice president, and in the House, the Democrats did very well back in 2018. They now hold 3 of the 4 House seats, and they're probably going to hold on to all 3 of those House seats. They're probably not going to win the 4th House seat. The Republican in charge, of course, Steve King, was the former Republican representative from that district. He lost his primary, and Randy Feenstra is likely to hold on to that Republican district. But Iowa has definitely seen a shift away from the 9-point margin that it saw in 2016 for the president. And Iowa's definitely tightened up, as well as Georgia. However, I do think the Republican and conservative base in these states is going to be enough for Donald Trump to carry it on election day, because as much as there's a 1-point lead for Democrats in the state, we all know that the margin of error statewide polls is up to 5 points. I think it's going to be a bit better. Next time it's going to be between 3 and 4 points. But again, that basically shows that these are still effective toss-ups. But if we're going to take the aggregate polling that we have as of the 25th of October, then these currently go into the tilt Democratic category. Now, Ohio has actually shifted to the right, and it currently holds a 2-point lead for the president. That puts it into the lean, the lean category. And Joe Biden held a 1-point lead the last time I did this. So Ohio, has historically been the bellwether state ever since 1964, I believe. For the past 60 years, it has been the deciding state. Whichever way Ohio has voted, that candidate or that party has won the presidential election. And at the moment, it does seem that Ohio will be breaking its 60-year tradition and be voting for the losing candidate. And that is quite significant, showing that Ohio is no longer, the deciding factor. I believe Florida is definitely the one that, does play that deciding factor now. Because realistically, Florida is the most important state looking at election day. I might go into that in another video, seeing which states will actually be called, on election day or election night, seeing as Florida is well versed in counting early early in person votes and mail-in ballots, whereas states like Michigan and Pennsylvania are very underprepared for this huge scale up of mail-in and early voting in general. But Ohio is seeming to be going for the president 2 point lead, like I said, and Joe Biden is probably not going to do well enough in these rural areas, which largely dictate the way the state is going to go. Now, there's only one state that I have left, and that is Texas. The last time we looked at it, I believe Texas was possibly in a 2 point lead or 4 point lead for the president, and that has been completely whittled down to an even vote or an even vote share, both on 48%. So there's still 4% undecided voters if we're going to take a look at the 538 polls. And it does have Trump up by 0.1, but if you're looking at 0.1 as a lead for the president, it's effectively a statistical tie. And that is from a lot of recent polling that has come in saying that Biden holds a 1 or 2 point lead in the state. And, if not an even lead or even vote share. And that is very dangerous for the president. Only 8 years ago, you're looking at Texas as a Republican stronghold. Mitt Romney won it by double digits. Hillary Clinton cut into that, taking about 9 or 7 points behind Donald Trump. And now Joe Biden is making Texas a real competitive state. And with 10 days or 9 days, sorry, before the election, if Texas is in this, currently undecided state, that is bodes very, very well for the Democrats in further elections. Because realistically, if the Republicans cannot win Texas, what of the large states do they win? Only Florida's, Florida could be trending towards the Republicans, but Texas is likely to gain 3 more electoral votes after the next census, and Texas is going to be even more of a big prize the um, for the electoral college. And if the Democrats are actually becoming competitive and turning Texas from a Republican state into a swing state, not only will that bode well for this current election, but the 2024 and the 2028 election. Because if the Republicans are not winning here, it is unlikely that they will be able to hold their lead in the Electoral College unless they start to flip the Rust Belt states, which could make up for the loss of electoral votes in Texas. So I'm going to keep that as a toss-up because realistically it does not affect the electoral vote and the victory, because Joe Biden and the Democrats would win 356 electoral votes and the presidency, and Donald Trump, the current president, would lose his re-election bid with 144 electoral votes. So thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, remember to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you all again soon.